You are now tuned in to the Gifted Gab.
Took us a while to get set up, but we're here. Another episode of 1K Convos. I feel like it's been a long time. A long time coming. And I'm here with a special guest. Robert Tyndale, my man.
What's up?
JustBobbyT. How you doing, man?
What's up? I'm doing good. I'm excited for this conversation. I think we had our quick little phone chat was like empowering. Got me pumped. So I was super stoked to kind of finally sit down in this podcast. And, you know, I've been a fan of the work that you're doing and the conversations you're having. And so
likewise, man.
I'm happy to sit in the chair.
welcome, man. It's been a long time coming. You know, it's good to finally get you in here. And you're doing a lot. You know, we were just talking about kind of some of the projects you're working on.
Yes.
It's all exciting. Like, talk to me about what that process has been like.
Yeah. So, quick little backstory. At an early age, about when I was about 16, fell in love with this whole like technology world ×2. And what got me into this kind of space and place was actually video games. Started playing a lot of computer games, in particular like competing online, joining teams. And then I got to a point where a group of friends of mine said, "Hey, do you want to go to this tournament?" And I was like, "Tournament? You want me to come to a tournament to play video games? Are you serious?"
Wavy.
But did it. It opened up like, so imagine this, right? You get into this space and it's at this what you call a LAN party where there's literally rows of thousands of computers back and forth with people propped in front of them. And then I played in this tournament, long story short, got second place, got all this computer gear worth thousands of dollars that I then sold. And I was like, wait a minute, I can play video games and get paid?
This is way before esports was a thing.
Is way before esports. Esports wasn't even a word. That wasn't even a thing. So then, like, long story short, started playing video games professionally, got a chance to, like, get sponsored by a team, traveled the world playing video games, went to, like, Monza, Italy, Paris, been to South Korea twice, up and down the States, all across Canada, all because of this thing through esports. And during that experience, I saw video game players develop these brands, become the brands, and then start the process of like building products, building services, all in the back of this thing of esports. And it was amazing. It was crazy. I didn't understand why everyone was able to do this and how literally gamers today were becoming, to be honest, $1 million businesses, $1,000, you know, entities. And so I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the concept of this content creation. Fell in love with the idea of like building brands, and I was hooked ever since.
What was your game of choice?
So it's called Counter-Strike.
Oh, come on. Counter-Strike bet. CS, man.
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
I remember those days.
So that had to be hooked because it was just interesting to see a subculture grow out of that, which is what you just said, esports, electronic sports. And then, like, look at it now. Like, I regret getting out of it.
It's crazy. They're giving scholarships and stuff now for it.
So a good friend of mine is building out a program for Northquest all around esports. And it's gone to the next level where NHL teams, NFL teams are buying these esports leagues, buying these esports teams and acquire them because that's the next, like, it's the biggest platform when you look at national sports. So if you combined NFL, NHL, the NBA, all the major sporting leagues, they don't even come close to where esports is in terms of audience.
Really?
Not even close.
It's interesting because if you think about it, there's a pretty, you know, low barrier of entry for video games. I mean, if you have a PlayStation or Xbox, you're in. You know?
100%.
It just matters how much time you're putting into playing the game. Whereas, you know, obviously you want to play basketball, you need a hoop and a ball, which is like a ball is easy to get.
Yeah.
But sometimes a hoop is hard to find. Right?
Totally.
But like most, I think, you know, we think about kids nowadays and technology and how it's kind of taken over. You know, we seen like Fortnite was a big thing, right?
A gigantic thing. Because a lot of people, you know, when we talk about things like Fortnite, The one thing that always is phenomenal is like the ecosystem that was created in Fortnite, where people were spending so much money on skins, and we're talking millions of dollars, like, the economy of what they're building off of nothingness, kind
free
of.
game.
Yeah,
The game
it's a
is
free,
free.
yeah, 100%. And so when you think about the scale of sort of those things, and now you think about like business opportunities, you think about sort of the business case around NFTs, all of that is kind of modeled after a lot of esports, Fortnite, and these other platforms, which is just phenomenal because it just shows there's opportunity today.
Absolutely.
Depending on whatever you want to do.
All through technology. I was thinking about kind of how we're talking about like the metaverse, NFTs and things. I'm like, this was kind of the thing with Fortnite in the beginning. I think it was Travis Scott was one of the first guys who did a concert.
Did you see the concert?
I didn't see it.
So I don't play Fortnite and stuff, but I was like, let me check this out. So I YouTubed it, right? It was amazing. If you can imagine, like, so what they did to kind of like dramatize it is like your characters are like a certain height and size, and they built like a huge gigantic like concert hall with a gigantic Travis Scott, and then like the way it was brought in between this asteroid, and then you fly to all the different. It was just it was crazy, and that partnership that he did around that was such a smart move.
I think
I would love to know sort of the economics that he has now sort of gained from that, from followers, from building an audience, from bridging that gap with such an epic gaming company. And then also, like, who can say that? They've done a concert at that stage.
A virtual one.
Totally.
I think when we talk about Travis Scott, I don't think we talk a lot about his business acumen because, he's got the partnership with Nike, obviously Fortnite. Obviously, we've seen what he's been able to do with Astro World down in Houston and stuff. So it's really interesting to see how kind of technology is enabling, guys that got in here with one lane able to, okay, here's 3 lanes, here's 6 lanes now.
100%. Because I think it's like a tribulation around how important brand is today. And so, like, let's like even to dial this back down to like the regular people, your brand is everything, to the point that even if you're looking for a certain job, you're looking to get into a certain organization, you're looking to join a certain club of some sorts. Your personal brand is everything. And the more you can start to design it, control it, build out elements that represent you within that space, watch how you're successful. Because let's say you're going for a job application. You have 3 candidates, all university educated, all the same credentials. They're going to go with the person who has the more added value, the more, experience,
perceived value.
100%. And perception is really the key to unlock there. And the more that you can showcase and tell stories or share through the content more about your personality, then you can get a better fit to that position, job, role, whatever you're trying to accomplish. And so I have personally focused on building my brand and trying to maintain it and do different things just to stand out from the crowd.
I think I always say that your business is based on perception, right? Whether you're a retail store, whether you're an internet business, agency, production company, whatever it is, perception is everything. Because like you said, that resume, those credentials are the same. What are you gonna? What makes you stand out?
100%, because we do business with people we relate to, that we like, and that we know. And so sometimes we forget, I think, like the reason why. So here's a prime example. I've been able to like secure a few different clients, and I ask them, and whenever I do sort of a quick little exit from when a project's done, of like a little interview, and I ask them, hey, so like, why did you choose me? And they're like, well, I know you. Is the majority of the time that I get out of that, or I've seen your work, or you got recommended from this person. And those recommendations come from people's perception of it being good or bad. And so I think, again, we underestimate the value of our brand. We underestimate how much, when we start to share certain content, share certain posts, that is actually a reflection of us, and people can interpret that or reverse engineer it to say, okay, cool, well, clearly you have these values based on all the stuff that you're usually sharing.
And people want to work with people that are on the same frequency as them.
So, and like the reason why, so my first business, clothing store called Room 322 was located downtown Edmonton. And my thought with me and my other business partners was like, hey, cool, I get it. Open up a store, go find the brands that you like, have enough money to buy the clothes you want, go do it. It is nothing like that. What it comes down to is they want to know who you are, what brands you have in your like selection company. Again, who are you?
What's your value proposition?
And also, do I like you? If you are a stranger and they don't like you, no brand will work with you because they don't trust you. They don't know how you're going to merchandise this stuff. They don't know how you're going to reflect on them. They don't know how you're going to tell stories around the brands or not, or even if you are cut from that cloth. So much comes down to who you are versus,
what you're selling.
100%, or even too, if you have the dollars. Because in a world that you're like take a prime example, Nike, then leads to like the Jordan counts and stuff like that. They don't even show up at trade shows. They're like, we're Nike. Why would we go to a trade show? Are you kidding me? Everyone wants us in their store, and everyone wants these exclusive drops in accounts. So how do you get to them? Is you have to go through, and the way we got to them was through just a series of relationships, asking people who's that contact, and then once when they came in and we started showing them, presenting what our story is, what's our roadmap, what we plan to do, and how we sit differently onto like our own separate space in comparison to everywhere else. So whether that's we're not in a major mall, your brand's not on the streets, et cetera, all that comes to play.
Competitive edge, right?
100%.
That's really big, actually. I didn't even think about how certain companies can get those certain drops, because Nike has done something over the pandemic where they pulled their retail stores and they pulled a lot of their drops out of physical stores, right? So it's actually getting harder to work with brands like that to get those exclusive drops.
100%. And those are what feed boutiques and smaller businesses, right? And there's, because of technology, because of we're all on the internet, to your point, brands are now seeing that value even more, that they're trying to hold on to that and control that culture, control those drops. Because yes, like, let's be honest, Nike's not worried about dollars and cents and selling product. What they're worried about is how do we build lifestyle and brand. And the only way to do that is through these exclusivity drops, and is really kind of trying to dial in that culture. Because a lot of those major companies, again, like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nike, those iconic brands, they're building culture, not brand.
Absolutely. It's building that, like you said lifestyle, right? I think when we wrap our head around the fact that Apple doesn't sell tech, they sell status.
100%.
Nike sells like that. Just do it. That's
Totally.
the greatest slogan in the world.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So I think we have to start to recognize the importance of branding. And I see a lot of small businesses. Obviously I'm a small business owner myself, and I see like one of the first things we're thinking about is like, what's the brand? What is the perception? What are people gonna think when they're coming in buying a rug or coming in buying hair products? This is important because that is that first impression.
100%.
How important is that?
And I think, it's kind of everything. And more importantly, where I think a lot of people, where I remember when I was, on this journey, I would always get tripped up on, is I would always be trying to sometimes emulate other people's brands or perceptions or identities almost, without truly kind of evaluating my own. And what that led to is sometimes this disconnect of being like artificial or being burnt out, because you're always putting on this hat, putting on this role. And again, the one thing I started to realize more and more is how you need to lean more into yourself. And the more you lean into yourself and celebrate that, and also just acknowledge it by just being you, suddenly it's no longer work to kind of put on, your hat, put on your shoes. And more importantly, people, your audience, will start to resonate more with you because they feel like that authenticity. And I think people can really see that.
Oh, people have bullshit detectors.
100%.
They can see when someone's being fake or putting up a front or whatever it is.
100%.
And I think that, just to comment on leaning into yourself is something I think, for me personally, the pandemic helped me kind of lean more into who I am and kind of, exude that in those brands and everything that I'm doing. Because I think it was the other day, someone was like, yo, man, you do a lot of things, but it seems so organic. And I'm like, yeah, because they're literally just extensions of
100%.
myself. You know, and that's what makes it so easy. It doesn't feel like juggling. It doesn't feel like work because everything is leaning into who I am as a person. You know,
Totally.
we think about the collective. It's like that's my heritage. You know, Persian rugs. That's where I'm from. I'm selling rugs. I'm selling my country's products, right?
Yeah.
You know, hair products. You know what I mean? Like everything is kind of this just an extension of who I am, and that's what makes it so easy.
Totally.
You know, what do you think is the steps necessary for people to kind of step into themselves in order to build their brands and
like
whatnot?
I'm a fanatic about personal reflection, and like personal reflection can look a number of different ways, but the way I do it is I do traditionally like almost like a journal. I do a daily journal where I recap and ask myself some key questions around sort of acknowledging my wins, 2, pinpointing one thing in my day that I've learned that is different, that's interesting. And number 3, I also reflect on sort of what I did not accomplish so that it maps to then what I do on a weekly basis, a little recap. And then on a monthly basis, I do a recap of the month. And what that has done is I've realized and learned stuff I never knew about myself, such as what kind of gets me going in respect to recharges me, and what do I hate, and what do I truly like demotivates me to kind of get work done or things done. So I think some of the most things like it's funny, we spend so much time with like our jobs, with our work, with our significant others and things like that, but we spend sometimes the least amount of time on ourselves. And I can tell you like there's so much value in learning more about yourself. 100%. And one of the best ways of also doing that is that there's so much books out there that you could just literally are targeting around asking yourself questions. And then by going through the process of learning about yourself, by asking yourself questions and really jotting it down and writing it, you'll begin to kind of connect certain dots that, to your point, you start to realize that, okay, cool. Instead of me starting this random business, doing this random thing, now if I start to lean into my heritage, into my culture, then I'll inherently start to have a certain nuance around it because, hey, this is me, this is my culture. When I pick a project, I'll know to say no to these projects and yes to these ones because this is what I care about and this is part of the system. And so again, if you start to learn more about yourself, then you'll be able to make better decisions that is for yourself. Absolutely. Where at times we sometimes just take advantage of the opportunities, because what happens when you have like 10 opportunities and all 10 are great opportunities? How do you choose?
Good question. You have to have a filter, right? I think, you know, what you said about reading those books, you know, because I've read hundreds of self-help and business books and stuff like that, and I start to find that like these questions are the same. The topics are really similar, and they always come back to the same points. So the point of the book is not just to read it, it's to reflect after reading or while you're reading it, right? And you start asking yourself questions. Oh, okay, what do I really like? What do I really enjoy? What really gets me going, right?
Totally.
You start to talk, you start to ask yourself these questions, and you start to carve out this self-awareness, this I don't want to say ego. I think we give ego like a very negative connotation, but you carve out this person of yourself.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. And to that point, I think ego, you're right, it has a negative connotation, but ego is powerful. Ego is you. It's your essence. It's your, sure, for lack of better words, could be your soul almost. And the question becomes is, with your ego, what is accompanying around it that makes you, or ultimately, potentially, what is sort of components of your ego that makes you have that unfair advantage? So part of my unfair advantage has been sort of my knowledge and experience of building content from a technology standpoint. I just love it. I nerd out about it. I read books for fun around it. I talk on forums. I'm always digesting and learning it. But there's other aspects that I hate. I hate accounting. I hate numbers. I hate sort of that business management side of things, of administration. So now that I'm conscious and aware of something I really love and what I really hate, I know what to outsource in terms of pushing off and selling, buying someone's services around, and I know what I need to hold on to in-house because it's important to me. It recharges me. It powers me. It makes me want to keep going.
It doesn't feel like work.
100%. It's not work.
It's not work. Exactly.
So like that's like, I guess, like the yin and yang to the pursuit, to your point, of sort of reading some of those self-help books, is to truly start the process of just learning more about yourself. And to your point, I read a ton of them. I'm constantly digesting them, and I feel, which is really interesting, you said, end of the day, it's all about just self-reflection, bottom line.
Bottom line, yeah, 100%.
And that in itself, I think, is the value of the book. And it's, yes, there's some new insights and some new things, but then those things are out the door the next day because the world's moving so fast. And so I'm always kind of pushing people, you need to start to self-reflect in whatever ways that you want to do it. Whether it's acknowledgement of the work you're doing, you just taking a step back and pausing, or you saying like, hey, I did some good stuff today, so I'm going to reward myself. You know, we don't take the time to reflect.
Reflection is important, man. I think that it's a key to like self-awareness. And then it's like, once you're self-aware, everything like moving forward, I always say that it's really hard to move forward if you have no direction.
100%.
You know,
because what is forward?
What is forward? Exactly. What is forward?
100%.
You know what I mean? If there's no direction, then forward could be lateral. You know, like, so I think that, you know, that picture, that destination, wherever you're trying to go, it must be clear. And
totally.
You need to self-reflect and have that self-talk.
100%. And like an example that I have around that is like, so I have a production company called Verge Media. And from the beginning, I said, I will never touch a wedding ever. Like event, activity, never. I will not. I'm staying away from weddings. I will not build a business. I won't do it. I don't care how much money you want. Nope. And the reason why is I just don't want to be in that tension. I don't want to be in that space. There's so much
drama.
Exactly. Drama. There's so much stuff around it, even though that is a big, clearly booming like space where people are only wedding photographers or videographers or things like that. And just out of my own creative output, I didn't want to just do that space. I preferred the other space of like creating more storytelling, cinematic type of content versus weddings. So I think if I was not self-aware, I might, because that dollar amount was here, because my bills were stacking up, I would have taken on a wedding project. But I was like, no, there's a reason why I'm not doing this. I don't want the workflow or even to the process and going down that rabbit hole. And so I decided to kind of stick in my lane. And by doubling down in my own lane, I'm hopefully slowly becoming an expert in that space, so that then people know, okay, cool. When you need someone around this project, cool, I'll go to Bobby. I know this is the perfect spot for him around this.
And it's interesting you say that, because that space is saturated, right? It's like, once again, how are you going to separate yourself in a space like that? It's crazy that you say that, you know, you have your production company, because I just recently started my own production company with everything going on, and we're going to talk about Storyhive and stuff too, but you know, with everything going on, it's like, okay, I'm starting this production company, right? And what was clear cut for me was that I know exactly what kind of projects I want to do. It's that simple. I know exactly what I want to get out there. It's just a matter of how am I going to do each one step by step, right? And it's like having the destination in mind, or the goal or whatever, that having that, when you have that clear cut, what you're saying about you're saying no to wedding photography, that's a result of knowing where you're trying to take this thing.
100%.
You know, if you're like, this is where I'm trying to go, those 10 opportunities can come in front of you, and you're like, no, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Why? Because it doesn't lead to that final destination, right? So I think that, you know, when we're talking about self-reflection and awareness and stuff like that, you know, when you start to have those conversations with yourself, you're able to say, this is where I'm trying to take this. So when this opportunity comes and it's got this big price tag on it, you're like, nope, this doesn't align with my roadmap.
Totally.
This is taking me off course. This is a detour.
100%.
And it makes it much easier to make those decisions in between. And I'm really big on, you know, the Great Resignation. We're seeing a lot of businesses pop up, right? And people come to me with ideas and like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? I'm like, don't worry about what I think about it. Make a business plan. Just write a business plan out so that you know where you're trying to take your thing.
Totally.
Right? Your goals and all that is in front of you.
Totally.
So that you're not just starting something.
Totally. And you can put some kind of thought around some of the stuff. Because, I mean, to your point, I think a lot of people, when they come up with ideas, they really only speak about the, let's be blunt, sexy part of the idea. They're not talking about the pain, the hardships, the hard parts, the horrible parts. They're just strictly talking about the sexy part of the idea. And the business plan unlocks those other components, which sometimes are even bigger than the idea, which is really going to be the deterrent that's going to stop this idea to happening.
Exactly. And that's exactly why I think that, I like that you said that the sexy part of the idea is like, this looks great over here, right? It's like what we're seeing on social media, the sexy part of the idea, okay? It looks fantastic. It looks fabulous. Maybe you want to sip mojitos on the beach, but there's all these steps in between that I find people gloss over. They completely skip, like when we first started the carpet store, I used to sit there and I would come up with an idea and I would sit there and take a few weeks, research and write a business plan for it.
Yeah.
And that was my way of seeing if the idea was feasible or not.
And that's so important. And like, I'm curious, like, why did you write a business plan?
A business plan allowed me to see it in my head. What would the operations look like? What do the costs look like? What are the risks? What needs to happen before you even open your doors? How much investment is it going to take? It allowed me to really materialize the idea. Okay, you want to open a storefront? Okay, how much is inventory going to cost? Signage.
Totally.
All right, communications, right? Marketing. How the hell are people going to figure out that you exist? You know what I mean? And I've got business plans just sitting on my laptop for a shisha bar,
Totally.
clothing business. A production company was one of the first ones that I actually did a thing for, and then I didn't actually understand the business. And then when I started working in it, I'm like, okay, I understand it now. And so I went back and revisited it. You know what I mean? So,
and by the way, that's so dope. You have like business plans logged in your computer to pull out.
yeah.
That's so.
I feel like, and you went to university, so
Yeah.
I feel like going to school kind of gave me that, gave me the tools to be able to sit and, okay, I need to write out this plan. I feel like all writing is writing at the end of the day. Whether you're writing a business plan, a proposal, a script, an essay, it's all the same. You're taking whatever is here and you're typing it. You know what I mean? And, this kind of allowed me to, the trial and error. It's like, okay, well, now we're seeing that, okay, this idea isn't feasible.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not feasible yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but we're seeing a bunch of people pop up, a bunch of ideas. And the ideas are great if they work.
And if you can execute on it, to your point, because, again, in this day and age, it's like the cliches are all over the place. Let's be honest. There's successful restaurants. Cool. Go open up a successful restaurant. Let's see how you do. There's clothing stores that are successful. Okay, cool. Open a clothing store, and we'll see how you do. There is so much more than just the idea. It comes down to, in my opinion, execution. And I'm always trying to tell people, and I push back on them when they have a great idea. I'm like, okay, cool, but like, talk to me about the operation. Talk to me about the execution. Talk to me about the plan you have in place. And that's met with, well, I don't know. It's just an idea. I'm like, okay, well, then flesh it out and turn it into a side hustle and see if you can prototype it almost. I think that's something that I did not do in the past, which now I do, which is so smart. It's a better tactic is to like create a mock of your idea and put it out there to see if you can actually sell it before you spend the
money on it.
100%.
I always say that, you want to have this business. If you're opening something, you're starting this idea. Before you even start to invest $1 into it, you need to have an answer for everything.
100%.
You need to say, okay, if somebody asks you this about your business, you got to have an answer for it. If this stops working, you got to have an answer for it. If every single thing that happens, you need an answer for it. That's the key to business, because the core fundamentals of business is problem solving.
Totally.
Right? You see a problem, you come up with a solution.
Totally.
So if you're seeing problems in your business, you need to find solutions.
And like, it's so earlier when we were talking about how I like steered away from like wedding photography, for example, the one thing that I realized, like, I don't know everything. I don't know shit, to be honest. by me at times when I would get a wedding photographer person inquiring, a client saying like, hey, I have this wedding, I'll do this. I started to then push those onto other photographers, other cinematographers to build relations with them so that then I can hopefully get answers or bounce ideas off them so that I can always have like a source of information and expertise outside of my own. So you're 100% right. You have to either know it yourself or have people around you who are at least are experts around those areas, because that's why they always say the cliche, being a business owner, your best friend should be your accountant. Your other best friend should be your business advisor or your business manager, bank manager, because those two people have access to money, and the way that this money is being documented and controlled is vital.
Vital, yeah. And then you need a good lawyer and then a good mechanic.
There you go.
You don't want to drive that car and find out something's wrong and you don't know what's wrong with it.
Holy.
It's true. I think
Essentials.
Understanding that, yeah, you want to have all the answers, but understanding that you don't know everything, right? Like you said, being a student, a lifelong student. I think that's the key, because then you're not basking in your ignorance.
Totally.
Right? You're not able to blame something based on what you don't know.
100%. And like let's be honest. Let's rewind 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's a different world. Like, how could you not be like a forever student or a self-learner? How can you keep up? You can't.
You can't.
Like, a lot of this technology, this podcasting, this didn't even exist in this capacity. You needed millions of dollars to be able to broadcast what we're doing right now.
Absolutely.
But because of technology right now, it's now able to do it. So if you didn't keep up that these tools and these platforms were available,
then you would not.
You would be taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. I think the decentralization of technology has become, we're seeing it. We see it in media. We see it in how we are receiving our news. Like, there is no longer gatekeepers.
150%.
Anybody can walk in and do whatever they want.
Totally.
That's a blessing and a curse, because anyone can walk in and just do everything they want. You know what I mean?
Totally. And you know what? I think it's you're right, and I think it's more of a blessing than a curse, because, like, let's be honest, let's take it to an extreme. Like, what happened with George Floyd's murder would not have caught traction if it wasn't for the way technology was utilized to document that, in terms of everyone having a cell phone out there. Who knows if that would have sort of caught sort of the international global connection around, where everyone was able to rally and come together around solving, addressing, and identifying issues, in each respective unique country or city. And on top of that, when it comes to sort of, again, this information and having these gatekeepers, like, people are consuming so much information through these digital channels, these social channels, that allows, yes, the spotlight to be put on certain people who we feel like, okay, cool, they should not have the spotlight. But at the end of the day, I personally think it's done more good than bad.
I agree with that. I think it has done a lot of good. And when you talk about, what happened summer 2020, I think, that pandemic in a lot of different avenues had really shaken up the world, from media, right? From just the Great Resignation. We're seeing like work, and we can see that work can be done at home, and it's really, I feel like, taking power away from corporations, big businesses,
institutions
as well, right? Because everything has come to a complete halt.
100%.
And we really had to think about, for me, for sure, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm like, damn, like, what are we really doing out here? What is my contribution to society and humankind as of right now, right? And I think that if the world hadn't stopped, we never would have had those conversations.
No. And that's a huge point, because when things started to slow down, it allowed us to think, because let's be honest, life is so go. Fast. The cliche of it being a rat race is true. Like, we are bombarded with so much information, content. We're trying to please our significant others, our businesses, our organizations, our bosses. And when that thing came to the halt, it just allowed us to stop and just reflect or have life catch up. And like you, I hit that same similar kind of path of like, well, what am I doing? What does that look like? And how do I get better control around that? And so I use that time to start the process of implementing, different things, of building out, a better North Star of where I'm working towards. I started to kind of reevaluate the work that I was doing. And then I took the time to really, again, self-reflect on what's important to me so that then I can dial more into that. And there's still so much opportunities within that kind of lane or within that space.
The conversations with yourself are very important, man. and like you said, just slowing down and thinking, man, okay, I'm not doing this, and this now anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to improve? What do I need to implement?
Totally.
What were some of the things you implemented into your day-to-day?
So one of the biggest things, that's a good question. One of the biggest things that I implemented in my day-to-day was, again, I realized that I enjoy the creation process. So I started being more active of creating things. So I started my own YouTube channel that I started posting serious kind of content on it, and that kind of empowered me to do more. I started trying to get involved in other projects and taking advantage of, to be honest, some of the resources out there. So whether that's around grants, whether that's around initiatives, I started paying attention to that and started figuring out ways to tap into those resources. I started a non-for-profit during the pandemic because I saw a gap in between, long story short, in between sort of the Black community and us solving our own problems. So I started a non-for-profit, which I'll go into details later, more about sort of addressing that, about how we as a community can solve our own things. It's all about just us finding each other in this bigger system and community of business and work. And then in addition to that, I started to be honest, dial back on client service work in terms of me doing all this content creation for business organizations.
Agency stuff, yeah.
And I started trying to figure out more ways for me to create original content. So teaching other people to sort of do what I'm doing, pursue different crafts, or learn how they can become video editors or content creators, because I think, again, that is the unlock to whatever you're trying to do, which is communication.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How do I broadcast in a world that there's so much digital channels, that there's majority people spend more on the 6 apps on your phones than the internet itself? How do you show up on that space is important, and I want to teach people how they can better show up.
That's awesome. That feels like that must have been a long summer for you.
Yeah, it's funny what you said before about how when you started to realize more about yourself through your reflection, you figured out kind of, well, cool, let me stay in these lanes. I started to kind of pinpoint that same thing. Those projects, initiatives might be quite separate, but to be honest, that's what I've been doing for the past kind of 20 years, And now I just have a North Star of just figuring out, okay, cool, I'm just leaning more into that. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I've just realized the power and value of just doing what you know, and especially when you've spent so much time learning all this information or details or strategies or tactics. How do I double down in that?
Yeah, I feel like, society wants us to specialize in one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that can be kind of detrimental.
100%.
Because, for you, Bobby T has this skill, this skill, this skill, and this skill.
Mm-hmm.
The combination of these skills makes you unique.
100%.
But you just focusing on one thing, I don't know who he had on here, but he said specializations for insects. Right? You just having this one thing,
yeah,
you're competing with a mass market.
100%.
I mean? So you leaning into, it comes back down to leaning into who you are, saying, okay, well, I have experience here, I have done this, I've done this, I've done this.
Yeah.
The combination of these things brings a very unique value proposition that's
Totally.
not based on just one thing, right? And that's kind of what that pandemic was for me. It was like, okay, well, I'm doing content creation, I'm doing this, and I'm work here, and I'm whatever, I do this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
How do I find a way to, kind of channel all these separate things into one thing?
Totally.
Which is now become the personal brand, which I'm still working towards. It's really difficult when people ask me, what do you do? I think that's the worst. I hate that question because I'm like, depends which answer you want.
And you know what? Like, it's so funny because I've struggled with that too, where, you know what? I think that's actually an indicator. I think you need to spend a little bit more time reflecting, because you're right. I think specializing, first off, there's stages. I'm a big fan that, like, in the beginning, in your journey, in your career, whatever you're trying to accomplish, like, you need to sample, taste everything. You need to get experience. You need to try things to realize, what do I love and what do I hate? But I think when you're going through these trials, the specialization is like a combination between that and kind of what you call like almost like niching down, really picking an area or topic that you want to stick in. And so whether that's around, cool, I'm starting a podcast, what will I talk about? Well, if you talk about everything, you're kind of talking about nothing. You know, and so it's very important to start to really keen in on a certain type of person, a type of audience, a certain demographic, so that then when you speak to them, you'll hit them and they'll feel something. They'll feel that emotional engagement, and they want to follow you. They want to become your fan. They want to follow you around this journey. And so I have been actually falling in love with just getting very, very niche, very, very actually specialized almost, because I had the opportunity to really try a range of different things and experience a lot of different stuff to now say, okay, cool, with all of this, let me narrow that down. But to your point, it's funny. So university, got my business degree, specialized, our major in marketing. Marketing nowadays, what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, does that mean I'm a content creator in terms of producer and production of filming and documenting and doing audio stuff? Or does that mean that I coordinate and share posts and kind of work through the social channels? Does that mean I'm a writer, that I blog for you and all that stuff? Like, and all of those are like completely different skill sets. Yeah. So it's funny how a lot of stuff is about sort of like generalization that you do. You know, it's funny. A lot of big businesses or small businesses will hire, okay, cool, you're my marketer. Now I need you to do all of this. And it's like, well, what? I can't. Need more than that. I can't do all of that. But they want you to then be a generalist, which is important. But I think depending on what you're trying to do, the value and the money is being the specialist. Because I know you do nothing but edits, say, podcasts, and or actually, let me take a step back. Let's say if you are the best video lighter in the city, that's all you do. You don't touch anything else. You don't do no camera work. You don't do nothing. You only stick to lights. You best believe if I have a project and I need a person of light, I'm gonna say, okay, cool. I know exactly who to call. He or she's going to kill it because that's all they do. I know who to call, and so I will pay that extra $1 because I know that's what she does and that's what she will kill it at.
And that's kind of, you know, that's how, you know, you climb that pay scale, is when you specialize in one thing. You know, my problem has always been, if I can see it, I can do it. That's been my problem. You know, it's like, oh, I have a sick idea. Let me see if I can make it reality. Yeah. You know, and when I when we first started the Gifted Gab initially, you know, like, I'm like, you know what? I want a podcast. I want to put myself out there, you know, put out the personal brand and stuff. But in the back end, you know, I really want to get into film and television. That was always my thing. It's like, oh, this is going to be my way of like getting into that
100%
that lane.
Yeah,
you know?
getting your hands dirty.
Getting my hands dirty, you know? And then it led to me actually, I remember when I first got my acting agent, I didn't have any acting experience. I did a couple of classes and stuff. And he's like, you know, have you ever acted anything? I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
He's like nothing? Like, no student films or anything? I'm like, nope. So I'm like, but I do a podcast. Yeah. He's like, okay, you know what? Put that on your resume. You know what I mean? So now it became, okay, now I understood, okay, like, because when these castings or actors and things, they're looking and they want to see what you've worked on and what you've done. I didn't have anything. So I'm like, I have this thing. So let's find a way to work that in. And then it helped me start working my way into acting and all this stuff. And now, through that, getting my hands dirty, I said, okay, now I know what I want to be doing. It's creating, directing, writing, whatever it is, as long as they're the stories that I want to tell. Yeah. Right? Whether it's a comedy, whether it's a horror film, whatever it is. Yeah. You know? So, but I didn't have that clear picture.
Totally. And to your point, that like you needed to get into it. You needed to kind of create it from the ground up, and that's the best way. Because I'm cut from that same cloth. Again, my first business, clothing store. I never got into photography and videography until I had a clothing store, and I had to take pictures of my clothes. I had to take videos to put content out, and that's where I started to taste and I started to experience, and I fell in love with this process and went down a rabbit hole of nerding out. And that's where I was like, hey, cool, this is what I really like to enjoy. And I think you should never lose sight of that. You know, to not go too on a tangent, but this whole NFT craze, it's interesting. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't want to read headlines about it. So let me go out. I went out and I bought some NFTs. I'm experiencing about it. I'm learning about it. And I'm doing it not to, and I hopefully don't lose a bunch of money. I hope I make some money. But end of all, I'm doing it because I want to understand it, so then when the world decides to embrace it, or if something else comes out from it, you best believe I'll have some experience in it. I'll have tasted it. I'll have something to then make some moves or build a business, or at least understand it, because, again, I'm a forever student. I'll learn. I'll experiment.
I was late to a lot of these parties. You know, social media, when social media started taking off, you know, like Instagram, I was late to that party. Yeah, I was late to that party.
Define late.
Late as in like everybody's getting on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's probably because I still had a BlackBerry, but you know, but I mean, I was late to that party. You know, TikTok. Yeah. You know, like these things come and people think, oh, it's just a fad, but no, they become ingrained in
100%
our economy. Like you think about influencer marketing. Okay, it's another sector of marketing. We're talking about. But like, you think about how much money is floating around just in that economy. Billions of dollars. Just brands paying people billions of dollars to promote this product or this service or whatever. So people who were hesitant on TikTok, maybe they were influencers and they caught it. Some people didn't. You know, so we think that, oh, this is just a fad. People used to talk the same way about the internet.
100%. Like if you look, because it's so funny. There's this famous guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, who always says this line about how, like, you know, read the headlines from when the internet was a fad. And I was like, one day he always says that. And I was like, you know what? Let me actually Google to see the headlines. And I read the headlines, and it was insane what they were saying about it. Like between it being a fad, between like you're losing your money, like don't do it. Like it was so interesting to see how the mass media had such a visceral reaction to it, which then fed that perception that a lot of people, and regular people, said, okay, cool, it's nothing, who cares? To see it like it's literally everything. Like it's every, like let's be honest, we live in the internet right now. We like, and if you don't, show me your mobile phone, because we are all like, go anywhere and you see people you've seen people dying from their phones.
Absolutely. From
taking extreme selfies all the way down to not paying attention. Like, we are already living in the internet. And so it's just remarkable to see such an extreme case from it's a fad to where's this going?
Are you tired of the running around for a specific hair product, for a specific type of hair? Are you tired of overpaying for services like weave and extensions? Well, are you in the know of Western Canada's best kept secret? Afro Era in North Edmonton is now open and operating right at Londonderry Mall. Come shop all things black, including hair care, beauty products and accessories, and hair itself. Now accepting online orders as well as walk-ins for braids, weave, and more. There's no more running around to find the right products and services. Your hair is a statement, so treat it like one. Visit us in-store or shop with us online at afroera.ca.
So where do you think Web 3.0? Where do you think we're going with this?
Yeah, so what's interesting, just my understanding, because I'm no expert, you know. So far, my understanding of like when this terminology Web 3.0 is just the next phase or the next part of how the internet itself will become like sort of decentralized is like the term. So when that means ultimately, if I want to make a purchase from you, I can just directly purchase an asset or some piece of information or a service directly from you, skipping whether it's around the banks, skipping the institutions, basically skipping the series of middlemen, that come between that. Mm-hmm. And the other component about sort of this Web 3.0 is using the example, I guess, again, of like Fortnite. There's a lot of people who are buying assets that are digital assets within certain ecosystems, like a video game. And those are also $1 million economies within video games, which is insane. And so when you expand upon that in the digital space, I mean, we've all read the headlines in some sorts, whether that's around buying land, whether that's around buying pictures or JPEGs and all that stuff. And so whether you're for that or not for it, some of the popular like analogies that people keep on saying is like, well, ultimately, why do you want, why do you want a blue check mark in your Instagram? Why do you care about that? Mm-hmm. Why do you kind of seek sort of validation from the next person around you? Hence why you buy, whether it's around certain types of cars or brands and things like that. And ultimately, fundamentally, people care about how they're perceived. They care about sort of these assets. And so we have been buying digital assets for years, for decades, and the Web 3.0 is just the next almost space for that, the next medium. And I think it's interesting because it's really capturing what we've already been doing for the longest time. You take Spotify, for example, right? A lot of us, Spotify, Apple Music, all those like kind of platforms are music. All of us are members to that, and we don't own the actual songs. So we don't own the CDs, so to speak. We can't just play that. If for whatever reason Spotify, Apple Music just died tomorrow,
our playlist is gone.
They're all gone because we don't actually have the CDs. We don't actually have the tangible items. And so when people are saying like, well, that's so stupid, why would I ever buy a plot of land that's digital, or why would I ever buy this figure or this picture? Well, you're already doing it. It just looks a bit different. It's a lot more basic now, and it'll be a lot more complex later.
That's interesting. I think it's really interesting the direction we're heading in. It's like trying to find out how you fit in that grand scheme of things. How can somebody take advantage of this progression we're having in technology?
Totally. And like it's scary. It's scary because it's unknown, but I don't know. It's fascinating. If you really think about it, like, what a time to be alive.
Absolutely.
Like, I sometimes when I see this technology around me or these things, advancements, I always ask myself, like, what would my great-great-grandparents think about this? When they were literally on the farms or just worrying about literally putting food on the table, like, they had no choices, no options. They just had, like, 1, 2, 3. To be honest, my parents had, like, when they were children or teenagers or young adults, had like limited choices in comparison to now. Oof. Like right now, if you wanted to, in probably a matter of a weekend, you can have an online store, business going, easy, rolling, and people can buy and purchase from it within a weekend.
Easy.
That was unthinkable. Mm-hmm. In our parents' generation, and then our grandparents, like, get out of here. Like, you kidding me? So we, in a world that we have a ridiculous wealth of opportunities, what am I doing to take advantage of that? And if I don't, I'm disrespecting them.
Absolutely. I always say that, like, even for my parents, I'm a children of immigrants, for me not to be taking these advantage of these opportunities is like a spit in the face to them.
Why did they bring you here?
Yeah.
Why do they put so much work to, come to this different world or this different piece of land and things like that? And it's to have opportunities. And so I'm so passionate about that.
Absolutely. I think that, what you were saying before about the wealth of these opportunities, I think sometimes we can get indecision paralysis because there's so many options, and comes back to that self-reflection and why it's so important, because you're here, you're in this place, you don't want to be stuck doing something you hate.
100%.
So you got to figure something out. You got to figure it out.
Totally. And to that point, like, you have so many choices that why would you stick with something you hate? So let's say, I get it. Like, we all have certain circumstances and responsibilities that we need to do at times, things that we don't like. So you don't like your job, you're 9 to 5, but you have responsibilities all around you. I think it's about focusing on your off time, to start building out some of those side hustles to edge out on your responsibilities, whether it's financials, usually our bills or things like that. Start to figure out ways to supplement that slowly through products, through other services, through and what's the real funny thing is, it's like you could do there's so much. It's about you just figuring out where you want to try, attempt it, see what happens, scrap it if it doesn't work, and then pick the next idea of your hat. Because we are inundated with too much information. Mm-hmm. You go on YouTube, you type small businesses, you see 1 trillion small businesses. And all 1 trillion of them are like all great ideas that could bubble up to success. So it's like, how do I pick one? And I think it's about literally flipping a coin, drawing a hat, asking someone, like, pick one for me, do whatever you need to do, pick it, try it, prototype it, experiment, figure it out, do some research, and immediately start getting your hands dirty to see if it's something that you can bring to fruition.
Absolutely. I think episode before this, maybe 3 episodes ago, we had the kid T on, and he said, he started with rap, but it led to him figuring out he likes camera work. So now he's a videographer and filmmaker and stuff like that. Totally. So it's like you went and said, I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. And you figured out, I kind of like this. Like, I can learn this. I can get used to this. Mm-hmm. So that being able to sample and taste and figure out, making the choice. And I think that's one thing we haven't talked about. It's like you have to choose to, I'm going to go and do this thing, or I'm going to try to make it to this, or I'm going to try to get. That has to be a choice, a conscious decision you make. Totally. So that now it's like, I've made this decision, so now I'm trying to execute this here. Yep. So that everything else in between is leading to that. And in between there, you may figure out that, man, I don't even want to do this anymore.
100%. And I think one of the biggest deterrents that people have is the cliche, just starting. We have sometimes so much self-doubt. We have so much naysayers around us. And really, and again, this is going to be the theme of this podcast. It's about self-reflection. By truly being able to understand what is important, like here's the kicker. How can anyone else truly understand you more than you? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, they're not you. They don't know 100% of your experiences. They don't know the time when you got your heart broken, or how you felt after your friend ditched you, or how when you were starting your first business, you were like sad or crying or just like whatever. They've not experienced what you've experienced. So because of that, how can they dictate to you that what you're doing for a business or an idea is the wrong idea? You can get insights. You can ask them questions. You can get feedback. But ultimately, you have to make that choice.
That's a bar. That's it right there. I mean, at the end of the day, when we talk about having vision, right? Being able to see something all the way through. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to have that vision except you. Nope. Nobody's going to be able to see what that finish line looks like except you. And that's why it's so important to get the insight.
100%.
Take it with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, you're the only guy that can see that picture.
Totally. And that's where it's funny. And that's why, this is why Web 3.0 gets me so pumped. Because when everyone else around me is like reading the headlines, I'm putting in work. I'm reading. I'm highlighting text. I'm taking out sample information. I'm getting models of projects because I want to learn how projects are executed and what makes them fail. I'm building the blocks to potentially do my own project because I want to, figure out firsthand what's it like to launch, hopefully a successful or a failure, so that then I can take all of those insights and learnings and apply it to whatever next opportunities be coming down the pipeline. Because let's be honest, technology is winning and it's going a certain direction, and it's not slowing down for no one at all.
Absolutely. I think that's it right there. It's like all the information is there for you to do whatever it is that you need to do. You just have to go out, seek it, apply it. I think application is a big one that we don't really talk about, but application of all this information that you're gathering and then you could build those blocks, you build a foundation, and then you can say, okay, well, I can see this through.
Totally.
You know, go for that.
And again, I think especially for some of those people who struggle, because I think there's like that starting point again. That's a struggle. So at a young age, I was lucky that I first learned to believe in myself, in regardless of what the world thought around me and the people around me, my parents, my brother, and people around me, was because of, again, around video games. And what happened was, when I was in the process of just playing for fun and things, so I remember my cousins, my friends, everyone would make fun of me around it and be like, oh, you're playing video games? You crazy? Oh, you joined a team? You joined a team? You can't go out because you're practicing? What is that? What do you mean you're practicing? And everyone would clown on me and would make jokes and things. And then the day it flipped was when I was like, hey, cool. Hey, guys, I'm going to North Korea. Or South Korea, I mean. I'm going to Italy, so I'll be back in like next week. And like all this stuff started happening around high school. And when that started to happen, people were like, holy cow, like, are you kidding me? And from that, I like cultivated this, and it was a blessing. I cultivated this like confidence to realize, okay, cool. If the world says I'm wrong, I might be right. That's an indicator that I might be onto something. I might be onto something different. I might be onto something new. And because of that, I've been always just pursuing, reading, learning, and just seeing what's next.
That's beautiful, man. I love to hear that, and it's giving you this newfound confidence. I was just saying off camera that, like, if you can build something once, that's probably the most important skill. Yeah, I think that's the most important skill.
100%. And a lot of people, that's why you'll see some of those, like, what you call, like, serial entrepreneurs, is because, like, let's be honest, your business compared to a clothing store, compared to a grocery store, I mean, fundamentally, it's the same thing. You're trying to do some marketing, you're trying to make sure the books are going towards the direction of profit versus loss, and you're managing people, employees. Like, fundamentally, it's the same thing, just a different service, a different product. So once you know how to do it once successfully and hopefully have that strong foundation, of course you could apply it to everything else. It just comes down to what you care about.
Comes down to what you care about. Now, speaking about what you care about, talk to me about what you're working on with Storyhive. I don't know if you want to get into details, but
yeah. So ultimately, for Storyhive, and for those who not fully aware, what Storyhive is, it's a project that Telus does, where it's their almost like granting arm that allows creators to get funding opportunities to get their projects and ideas supported financially. So for Storyhive, I was successful in, I'm going to go on a quick tangent. I was successful in their grant stream called Voices. And what happened was I was applying for a stream that you were successful in, which was called the Black Creators Grant. And what happened was when I applied for that, I was like, well, what happens if I don't get it? And I noticed that also Storyhive had these other streams popping up. So I'm like, you know what? Let me apply to everything.
that's exactly what I did.
Let me apply to everything. To hopes that I land one thing, because I'd rather 3 chances than just putting all my marbles in one.
Diversification.
See, so the reason why I brought that up is I know some people only went for the one. I was like, well, why?
Why would you do that?
And they're like, well, I was unsuccessful in that one. I was like, well, then why didn't you apply for the rest? And so, like, for everyone out there, I just want to say, always hedge your bets, diverse. Like, you know, like it's. I laugh because I think it's so foundational, but it's something a lot of people are not aware of. Like, try to play as much of the game you can and be in a number of different things to be successful. But I digress. So my Storyhive project is a podcast, a video podcast I'm creating called Record in Color, Decoding Undertones, where I'm having a series of conversations of how people are working with videos with people that have darker skin tones. Because ultimately, when it comes to the whole world of content creation, when it comes to working with people with darker complexions, it's a whole different tactic. It's a whole different strategy. These cameras, in terms of hardware, all the way down to the software, like these platforms, look at us differently. And so if you've seen the headlines of TikTok and how Black creators are not featured in their streams, or how they're looked differently, or how the monetization due to the views all has a different skewed because they're Black or have darker skin tones, all the way down to the hardware of these cameras look differently. And the best examples I've given is, like, if you, as a darker skin tone person, have ever been on a camera, what will happen is the camera will view your skin as being dark. And so the whole scene's dark. And so then it makes everything bright for like those laptop cameras whenever you're zooming in. And what happens is you look ashy. You look like you're dry. And it's not giving you a realistic color and not a realistic look of what you actually look like as a darker skin tone individual. So this podcast is going to go into sort of the tactics, the strategies of addressing that, of what you need to do to hopefully look better on camera. And then I'm also going to be bridging that gap when it comes to having discussions, conversations for the other genres. So there's videography, there's photography, there's illustration, there's graphic designs. And I'm hoping to just really unpack and provide as much resources and information of what it's like to work with someone that has a darker skin tone, and also as creators ourselves who have darker skin tones, how do we put ourselves in the best area of success?
Man, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant idea, and it's niche, and it's so necessary because we're taking up so much more space now, but sometimes we forget that a lot of this technology, a lot of the software and stuff, they don't think about us when they're creating it at all.
So I've been doing some research around this. Like fundamentally, like the basis of, and I don't want to go too technical for the people who don't know, but like the way cameras operate, from like the ISO selection all the way down to like frame rates, to just the mechanics that it was built around reading information, was always built around white complexion. So of course, if that is the foundation, when it comes to having a darker skin tone, it's going to react differently. You need a different approach. And I always use the analogy, if you look up the makeup industry or the tattoo industry, I mean, they have a different strategy when working with darker skin tones. The makeup industry has a different set of cover-ups and things for people that have darker skin tones.
Very
so
simple.
It's the same principles when it comes to creating content as a video creator or working with someone who's opposing the camera lens that has a darker skin tones, and there's just a different tactic, strategy, and approach.
That's interesting. Very needed, very necessary, man. Congratulations, man.
Yes.
That's big, man. I think that, it's about time we start taking up the space and talking about these things. We sometimes, when we are trying to educate people about how the odds are stacked against us, they think we're just talking historically, financially, economically, socially, whatever it is. But you really break it down and you look, uncover that lens cap and look at the technology, like you're gonna see that, damn, even this camera
is against me. It's working against it, but it's truth. Yeah. So again, like from the hardware companies to these devices, I mean, it's an uphill battle. And you think now, so there's this economy called the creator's economy, where between creating podcasts, YouTube shows, being an influencer, there's an economy of people who are making, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry where between sponsors and different business organizations, they're all kind of fueling this space that they're advertising to connect with audiences, connect to people. And again, when the hardware that we're utilizing, that we're learning how to use, is in itself a challenge, then we cannot show up to be our best selves. And we just have to go through different tactics, different routes. It's a different process. And we just need to learn more about the process we should be taking and less about learning about the Black experience the hard way, which is just by failing or losing a opportunity.
I feel like when it comes to learning these things, obviously, if the technology is framed this way, then the learning has also been framed in a way that's specifically for white people, the majority, right? So to see that they're giving space to us to do these things, to create these programs, to tell these stories, to talk about, not only talk about the difficulties, but to talk about the solutions. Because I find that, the virtue signaling and always pointing the finger at what's wrong, but not bringing a solution, it's counterintuitive. Like, it doesn't move us forward. We need, coming back down to business, solutions.
Totally.
Right.
And I like you're bang on in respect to there's one thing to identify the challenge, but it's to figure out, the way to solve it or that process behind it. And, like let's take again, which I've always said in business. So I attended university, went business, got my degree, cool. The one thing they never taught me at school was what's it like for me to sit at a table being a black guy, 6'2", with long dreads, and to opposite a person who does not look anything like me. That experience is totally different. I need to come prepared. I need to show up with more information to prove my expertise, my self-worth, my knowledge. I think more than someone else who can automatically get that relation. A lot of people don't realize, but when you're doing business with people, when you're working with someone, there's almost this like state of relationship that automatically comes at a table. And in that relationship, if I don't see myself in you, or if I don't see the cues that make up you being the right person or right expertise, then there's a lack of trust. And then ultimately, I might not want to work with you. So because of those nuances, to circle back, I think that experience as a creator, that experience as a way that I want to show up, to be more professional, to look my way, to feel that confidence because I know I look good, is very important, even if you're not a video creator, but you're just a person who just wants to make sure they're putting their best foot forward. And I can imagine with your project that you're doing as a director, as being a black man who's a director, you must have experienced like indicators, and I'm curious if you have any stories of like whether it's perception, whether it's around people, how they treated you. Like, I'm curious, does any stories resonate or come up around that?
My biggest thing when I was starting this project was not about the subject in front of the camera, but who's behind the camera. Because I think when we're approaching these kind of stories and we're trying to tell these things, culture is important. So, I couldn't sleep at night because I'm like, the experienced guys in this field are all white, right? But then have guys that I know what they can do with a camera or what they can do when they're part of a crew. So, I recorded my demo and I used this all-white crew at first. And I'm like, they did a great job. There's no denying it. Like, it looks better than what I expected.
100%.
But now I'm like, I'm going to have a hard time sleeping at night if I take this thing all the way and there's nobody that looks like me behind this camera that I'm working with. I knew that was going to bother me. And, I've been sitting on this project for I'm approaching 2 years now. Yeah. And I'm having this creative negotiation in my head about, okay, well, this is the budget. This is how much these guys cost. This is how much this guy costs. Like, how am I going to make this work so that I'm not only telling a story, but I'm able to, give guys that look like me opportunities, create a culture behind the camera so that, it's not just me in that room. Because I feel like if I'm in the room and all these people in the room are white, then as a creator and a guy that's about community, I failed.
100%. And to add to that, I think, you know what? I don't know if we've totally, amongst our own communities, have audited how much talent there are within our spaces.
There's a lot.
A ton. I remember, and like going a step forward of like a different industry, there's this awesome group, 5 Artists, 1 Love, that does this like production here in the city where they do a multi-artist disciplinary pop-up. And through them highlighting and attending their shows and seeing how much talent is locally in respect to visual artists, spoken word poets, and all the way down to musicians. To be honest, I had no clue they existed here. And I think that applies for everywhere. When it comes to some of these productions, video productions and sort of the work that you're doing, like I like to think there's going to be a moment in time that once you're working with this team, there's going to be a culture within there that they're going to be either kind of be able to comments or bring some added value in respect to saying like, hey, that last recording like hit home. Like, wow, that individual that we were speaking to was saying stuff that resonated with me because of my families, because of what I experienced with my uncle, my dad, my mom, my aunt, etc., my sister, my brother. And there's going to be a nuance based on the work that you're trying to do that's going to come out of having a production team that has some of those lived experiences that you can't teach, that will then hopefully make that final creative project that much more polished, that much more unique, that much more, I don't know, for us.
Authentic.
100%. There you go. Authentic.
And that's what I'm trying to chase, and that's what I've been trying to chase. And I found a way to bridge that gap. It's like,
Dope.
okay, you keep some of these experienced guys, but you pair them with the other guys that want to get into this industry. And so that's what my approach has been. And when you're recording and you finish an interview, you get both sides are saying, man, that really hit home, or that this story is crazy, you know? So I think, I like to think that I've figured it out.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure it out, obviously.
Totally.
But I've learned a lot. Just like directing is not easy, man. Like you gotta cross all your T's, dot all your I's, and have everything figured out on the back end so that you can sit and just, you know, sit with the talent, sit with the subjects, and really find a way to get the best out of them. And, you know, for me, I hope that I'm doing this the rest of my life, you know?
Totally.
It's kind of crazy to think that any of this work that we're doing will ever end, because it doesn't.
Totally. The medium might change, but the fundamentals always will be the same.
Facts. You know, so it's been eye opening, man, and you know, shout out to Storyhive for just giving the opportunity to guys like us to be able to come in there and tell our stories, because at the end of the day, you know, the question for me was like, who is telling these stories? And I was listening to, I think it's the No Film School podcast, and they did an episode and they were talking about some of the statistics about the screen industries in the U.S. And, you know, 85% of directors, white males. 85% of writers, white males. 80% of camera crew, white males, right? Producers, 92% white males. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, 9 out of 10 people working in this industry are white males. So then it's like, we have to come in and we have to take this. We have to take up space.
Totally.
And that's why this time that we're living in is so crucial, because as a black man, to be in those rooms, it's not going to get more blacker than this. I'll tell you right now.
100%. And the like, let's be honest, like, it's still expensive to, like, you know, penetrate this industry, but it's not near, it's now possible, where before, I mean, let's be blunt, to do a production like this, we're talking millions. And now, like, you know, you can get away with, like, doing this by, like, shoot, even if you're bootstrapping, you can borrow stuff. You can use your camera phones. You can, like, you know, there's a roadmap to get to that position that you can make it affordable to your budget. Absolutely. And this just did not happen before. And to your point, I like to always think of it as well as, because this space is not dominated by us, that means there's a bigger opportunity for us to participate, because once we start to tell our stories,
it's fresh.
It's
so fresh. It's
100%.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to have a different hit. It's going to hit differently. It's going to look differently. It's going to sound different. It's going to feel differently. And so once we get to start the process of being, hopefully showing up more and getting our own experiences and getting our own reps in, oh boy, we're going to do some damage.
We're going to do some crazy damage, man. And you know what? I always go off of, I feel like Nip was a prophet, man. He said, you know, if you can find a way to add to the art, you can make a lot of dough in this. Even it's not about the money. It's about just finding ways to be revolutionary.
100%.
You know?
Because, like, at times, you know, like, yes, you need to make the dollars and cents, but, like, if that's the goal, then you'll always be limited.
Chasing something.
And then as soon as you trigger that, like, it becomes about, yes, the art, yes, about the creative, yes, about the journey, then suddenly it doesn't matter. Like, so cool. I made 50 million, I made 2 million, I made 1 million. It doesn't matter. I'll keep going. I'll keep progressing. Because sometimes I ask myself, like, man, I don't know, man. Some of those people who are, like, in the tens of millions or hundreds of millions, what keeps them going? What keeps them going? But it's because it's clearly not about the money. It's clearly not.
It's not. It's about passion, man. And having passion is a luxury.
What? Yo, like, repeat on that, like, 100%.
It is, man. So, you know, Bobby, tell us where we can find you. Let us know where we can get a taste of your work.
Yeah, on all platforms, just JustBobbyT. So JustBobbyT on all platforms. Keep it real simple. On my most active one is Instagram, and that's where I kind of share a lot of things, but you can find me everywhere.
Man, I appreciate you coming, man. I think you gave us a lot of value, a lot of things to really think about. Some self-reflection.
I hope so, but I just want to say, hey, thank you for blessing me, having the chance to be on the stage. I think this is dope. Diving deep into conversations. The Gifted Gab is an amazing space, and so thank you for having me.
Appreciate you, brother. You guys know what it is. 1K Convos, another one. And just like that, we gone.